My cousin accused me of sleeping with his fiancée on his wedding day. He attacked me, and my family disowned me without asking anything. But 5 years later, the liar confessed the truth. And now they're all begging for forgiveness. They'll never forget. I'm 32 years old. I work in tech in Seattle, and up until about a month ago, I thought I had left behind what happened in 2019. But it turns out the past has a very peculiar way of showing up when you least expect it. What I'm about to tell you basically destroyed my relationship with my entire family, turned me into a pariah in my hometown, and forced me to rebuild my life from scratch in a city where nobody knew me. And the worst part of it all, the absolute most fucked up thing about this whole situation, is that I never did anything wrong. Literally nothing. I guess I should start at the beginning. When my cousin Daniel and I were practically brothers. We grew up together in a small town outside Portland. You know, one of those places where everyone knows everyone and gossip spreads faster than a wildfire. Our families lived 3 houses apart, and for as long as I can remember, Daniel and I were inseparable. We went to the same school, played on the same baseball team, even went to state college together for 2 years before he decided his thing was fitness and opened a gym. I continued with my programming career, but we were still super close. Like, he was more my brother than my biological brother Patrick. You know what I mean? When Daniel met Jennifer in 2017, I was genuinely happy for him. Jennifer was an elementary school teacher, super sweet, and came from a very religious family, but seemed down to earth. They looked good together. And when Daniel asked me to be one of his groomsmen at the wedding, I obviously said yes. The wedding was planned for June 15, 2019, and the whole town was excited because, in small towns, weddings are like the event of the year. The truth is, the months leading up to the wedding were normal. I mean, I was working at a software development company in Portland, about 45 minutes from town, and I'd see Daniel on weekends. Jennifer and I got along fine, like casual conversations about Netflix shows or how work was going, nothing more. We were never alone together. There was never anything remotely inappropriate because there simply wasn't anything there, She was my cousin's fiancée. Period. Then the wedding day arrived. I remember it perfectly because it was insanely hot, like 95 degrees, and I was sweating in that dark suit I had rented. The ceremony was going to be outdoors at a vineyard about 20 minutes from town, one of those nice places that cost a fortune to rent. I arrived early because I had to help with some of the decorations, and everything seemed to be going perfectly. Daniel was nervous but happy. Jennifer looked beautiful in her dress, which he found out later cost like $3,000, and the families were there taking pictures and toasting with champagne. What happened next was so fast and so violent that I still have trouble processing it. It was like 2 p.m., an hour before the ceremony, and I was outside the main hall talking to Greg, Daniel's best man and his college roommate. We were laughing about something. I don't even remember what, when suddenly, I hear screaming from inside, like real screaming, not excitement but fury. And before I could react, Daniel came out like a hurricane from the building and came straight at me. I didn't have time to even ask what was going on. Daniel grabbed me by the collar of my suit and slammed me against the building wall, and his face was red, completely unhinged, with the veins in his neck bulging. He started yelling things at me like, "How could you do this to me? And how long have you been sleeping with her?" And I honestly had no idea what he was talking about. I tried to ask him. I tried to push him off me, but he punched me in the face and knocked me to the ground. It felt like my nose exploded. Blood started pouring out immediately, and Daniel kept yelling that I had ruined his life. Greg and 2 other guys had to pull Daniel off me, literally dragged him because he kept trying to hit me. I was on the ground, bleeding, completely confused, and all I could think was, what the hell is happening? My father appeared out of nowhere. My dad was like 58 years old at that time. He picked me up off the ground, but not in a concerned father way, but with disgust. He looked at me and said, "You have 5 minutes to leave before I call the police." And I said, "Leave? What are you talking about?" And he just repeated, "Get out of here now." The wedding obviously got canceled right there. Jennifer came out crying. Her mother was hugging her and yelling things at her, and everyone was looking at me like I was the worst scum on the planet. My brother, Patrick, and 2 other cousins escorted me to my car, and Patrick told me in a super cold tone, "Don't ever come near any of us again." I asked him what I had done, why they were treating me like this, and he just said, "You know perfectly well," and he left. I drove back to my apartment in Portland with my nose bleeding, my shirt ruined, and understanding absolutely nothing. I tried calling my mom like 10 times. My sister Allison, who was 20 years old back then, Daniel, anyone who would answer. Nobody picked up. I sent messages asking what was happening, begging someone to explain, and nothing. Total silence. It wasn't until nighttime, like 11 p.m., that my sister Allison finally sent me a message. And when I read it, I swear I felt like the floor opened up beneath me. The message said something like, "I can't believe you did this. Robert, I thought you were a better person. I don't want to hear from you again." I responded immediately, "Did what? What are you talking about?" And after like half an hour, she responded, "Don't play dumb. Everyone knows you and Jennifer have been sleeping together behind Daniel's back for months." I stared at the message, unable to breathe. Sleeping with Jennifer? Where had they gotten that from? It was completely absurd. Nothing had ever happened between Jennifer and me. We hadn't even flirted. Nothing. I wrote her a long message explaining that it was a lie, that I had no idea who had said that, but it was false, that I would never do something like that to Daniel. She left me on read and blocked me. The following days were a total nightmare. I tried contacting everyone. My parents, Daniel, Jennifer's parents, anyone who would listen to me. Nobody responded. I went to my parents' house and my mom didn't even open the door. She just yelled from inside that I should leave or she'd call the police. I tried to talk to Daniel at his gym, and the guy at the front desk told me he had orders not to let me in. It was like living in a horror movie where everyone is against you and you don't know why. I finally managed to talk to Greg, Daniel's best man, who at first didn't want to talk to me either, but eventually agreed to meet me at a neutral cafe. I told him I needed to know what was going on, that someone explained the accusation to me because I hadn't done anything. Greg looked at me with a mixture of pity and contempt and told me what had supposedly happened. Turns out a woman named Monica, who had been going to Daniel's gym for like a year, had told him 2 days before the wedding that she had seen me with Jennifer at a hotel in Portland. According to Monica, she was there for a work event and saw us go into a room together. She also told Daniel that she had heard rumors that Jennifer and I saw each other often and that other gym members knew it, but nobody dared tell him. Daniel confronted Jennifer, who obviously denied everything because there was nothing to deny. But Jennifer's family, super religious and strict, started pressuring her. And with Monica's accusation and the fact that I was close to the couple, everyone just assumed it was true. I told Greg that was completely false, that I had never been at any hotel with Jennifer, that Monica was lying for some reason I didn't know. I begged him to help me clear things up, to tell Daniel to at least give me a chance to defend myself with evidence. Greg just shook his head and said, "Robert, half the family saw you two acting suspiciously at family events, always talking privately." I said, "Talking privately? When? Where? Give me an example." And he couldn't. He just said, that's what he had heard. But that's when I realized it didn't matter what I said. The story was already established in their minds. I was the villain, and so was Jennifer, and nothing we said was going to change that because nobody was willing to listen to us. It was like trying to fight air. What came after was even worse. Since I lived in the same town where I grew up and worked in Portland, which is super connected to that area, the gossip spread incredibly fast. At my work, they started looking at me weird, and my boss called me into his office like a week after the incident to ask me about the rumors they had heard. I explained the situation to him, told him it was false, but I could see on his face he didn't entirely believe me. The atmosphere at the office became super uncomfortable, and I basically felt isolated even there. Jennifer, for her part, was going through the same, or worse. I eventually managed to contact her through a new email she had made, and she told me her parents had literally thrown her out of the house. They threw all her stuff onto the street, told her she was a disgrace to the family and that they had excommunicated her. Like her parents were those super intense Christians. And for them, Jennifer had committed the unforgivable sin. She was living with a college friend in Portland, but they were also harassing her at her school. The parents of the kids had started demanding that she be removed, saying they didn't want a person of questionable morals teaching their children. It was absolutely insane. We met once at a Starbucks like halfway between our jobs, both paranoid that someone would see us and use it as proof of the supposed affair. Jennifer looked destroyed. She had lost like 10 pounds, had huge dark circles under her eyes, and told me she didn't know what to do. I asked her if she knew who Monica was or why she would have made up that story, and Jennifer told me she knew Monica from the gym, but they had never been friends. In fact, Jennifer remembered that Monica had always been kind of weird with her, like jealous or competitive, but she had never paid it much attention. That's when we started to suspect that Monica had made everything up for some personal reason, probably because she wanted Daniel for herself. But we had no way to prove it, and even if we could, who was going to believe us? The narrative was already established, and we were the bad guys in the movie. 2 horrible months passed where my life basically disintegrated. I quit my job because the environment was unbearable. My friends from town stopped talking to me. And every time I went out to buy something or went to the bank, I felt the stares and whispers. In a small town that's torture, you literally can't escape. Jennifer quit her teaching job because the pressure was too much, and we were both living in a kind of horrible limbo where we weren't welcome anywhere. It was Jennifer who first made the decision to leave. She called me in August 2019 and told me she was moving to Chicago, where she had a cousin who could help her get a job. She told me she couldn't take it anymore, that she needed to start over in a place where nobody knew her. And honestly, I didn't blame her at all. I was considering the same thing, but still had that foolish hope that someone in my family would eventually listen to my version and realize that everything was a lie. That hope died when my younger sister Allison, who had been my favorite of all my siblings, sent me a message saying that our parents were planning a big family gathering for my grandmother's birthday in September, and that they had specifically said I wasn't welcome. Allison told me, literally, "Mom says, don't show up, because you're going to ruin Grandma's day with your presence." And that was it. That was the last straw. In October 2019, I moved to Seattle. I got a job at a tech startup, found a small apartment in Capitol Hill, and basically tried to erase my previous life. I didn't tell anyone in my family I was moving. I just disappeared. I changed my phone number, blocked everyone on social media, and decided that if they didn't want to hear from me, I didn't want to hear from them either. The first months in Seattle were weird. On one hand, it was liberating to be in a place where nobody knew me and nobody judged me. I could go to the supermarket without feeling panic. I could make new friends without having to explain my past. But on the other hand, I felt empty, like a part of me had been ripped out. It had been 2 years, you think, or maybe a year and a half. I don't remember exactly, since I had talked to my parents, my siblings, Daniel, anyone from my extended family. It was like being dead, to them. I worked a lot in therapy during that time. My therapist in Seattle was a lady about 50 years old, super empathetic, and she was the first person I told the complete story to. She helped me process the rage, the pain, the feeling of absolute injustice I felt. She also helped me understand that I couldn't control what other people thought of me, but I could control how I was going to live my life from that moment on. In the summer of 2021, like 2 years after all the drama, my coworker Alex organized a barbecue at his house. I already felt more emotionally stable. I had made good friends in Seattle, and I was starting to feel like maybe I could be happy without my family. At that barbecue, I met Victoria. Victoria worked in digital marketing, was 28 years old. E was 29 at the time, and was one of those people who immediately makes you feel comfortable. She was funny, smart, and there was something about her that made me want to tell her my life story, you know? We talked all night, and when the party ended, she asked for my number. We started dating like a week later. The first time I told her the whole story was about a month into us dating. We were at my apartment watching a movie, and she asked something casual about my family. Normally, I would change the subject or say something vague, but that night, I decided to tell her everything. I told her my entire family had disowned me for something I never did, that I had been falsely accused of having an affair with my cousin's fiancée, and that I had basically had to flee my town and start from scratch. I expected Victoria to get scared or start doubting me, but she just hugged me and said, "That's horrible. I'm so sorry." She asked for details, wanted to know the whole story from the beginning, and when I finished telling her, she said something I'll never forget. Robert, I know you. I've spent almost every day of the last month with you, and I know what kind of person you are. What your family did is wrong, and the fact that they treated you like that says more about them than about you. And I swear in that moment I felt like someone finally truly saw me. You know what I mean? Victoria and I became inseparable after that. She supported me in everything, even when I had bad days where the anger and resentment came back. She told me it was okay to be angry, that what they had done to me was unforgivable, but that I couldn't let it consume me for the rest of my life. She was my anchor, basically. What's super funny is that Victoria and Jennifer ended up becoming friends. Turns out they were both huge fans of true crime podcasts, and Victoria listened to them all the time. One day, she asked me if Jennifer also lived in Seattle, and I told her no. She had moved to Chicago. Victoria told me it would be interesting to connect with Jennifer because she was probably the only other person who really understood what I had been through. At first, it seemed weird to me. But Victoria found Jennifer on Instagram. Jennifer had changed her last name on social media to prevent people from our town from finding her, and sent her a message explaining who she was. Jennifer and Victoria started talking, and eventually Jennifer called me. It was the first time we had talked in like 2 years. She told me she was okay, that she had gotten a job at a school in Chicago, that her parents occasionally tried to contact her, but she had blocked them. She also told me she had met a guy named Ben, a software developer, and that they had been dating for like a year. She sounded genuinely happy, and I was glad for her. We promised to keep in touch, not because we were super close, but because we were like survivors of the same absurd war. Life continued being good. In 2022, Victoria and I moved together into a bigger apartment in Fremont. My parents tried to contact me once through a distant cousin who got my work email, but I ignored the message. I wasn't ready to forgive, and honestly, I didn't know if I ever would be. I felt like the damage they had done to me was irreparable. Everything changed last month. In October 2024, it was like 8 p.m. on a Saturday. Victoria and I were making dinner, and someone rang our apartment buzzer. We live in a building with a doorman, so it's weird for someone to show up without warning. I answered the intercom, and a voice I hadn't heard in 5 years said, "Robert, it's Daniel. Please, I need to talk to you." My first reaction was pure panic and rage. Victoria saw my face and asked me what was wrong, and I told her who it was. She told me it was my decision whether I wanted to talk to him or not, that she would support me in whatever I decided. Part of me wanted to tell the doorman not to let him up, but another part needed to know what the hell he wanted after 5 years of total silence. I told the doorman to let him up. When Daniel knocked on the door and I opened it, I almost didn't recognize him. He looked older, tired, and had the kind of face you make when you've been through something terrible. He tried to shake my hand, and I just looked at him without moving. Victoria stayed by my side, like a protective stance, and Daniel noticed the tension immediately. We went into the living room and Daniel started talking. The first thing he said was, "Robert, I'm sorry," and I didn't say anything. I just looked at him, waiting for him to continue. Daniel told me that Monica had confessed. Apparently, she had been living with guilt all this time and finally couldn't take it anymore. Monica confessed to Daniel about 2 months ago that she had made up the entire story about seeing me with Jennifer at the hotel because she was obsessed with him and wanted to ruin the wedding to have a chance with him. The full story was even more twisted than I thought. Monica had seen how Daniel and Jennifer were happy together, and it made her insanely jealous. She had noticed that Jennifer and I got along well as the family we were, and decided to use that to create her lie. She had never seen me with Jennifer at any hotel, obviously, and there were no gym rumors about us either. She had made all of that up, and apparently had given Daniel enough convincing details for him to believe it without questioning. Daniel told me that when Monica confessed, he immediately tried to find me, but I had disappeared completely. It took him weeks to track me down through old coworkers, and he eventually found my current address in Seattle. He told me he had also called Jennifer, who confirmed to him that I hadn't done anything to her, and that we had both been victims of Monica's lie. He was telling me all this while I sat there feeling a mixture of vindication and a deep rage I didn't know I still had. When he finished talking, I asked him, "And what do you want me to do with that information, Daniel? Do you want me to tell you it's okay, That I forgive you? Daniel started crying. I swear, real tears running down his face, and he told me he had ruined my life without any proof, that he had hit me, that he had convinced the entire family I was a bad person, and that he didn't expect forgiveness, but needed me to know the truth. He also told me the family knew, that he had told my parents, my siblings, everyone, and that they wanted to talk to me. I told him to leave. Victoria opened the door for him, and he left without saying anything else. When he left, I broke down. Victoria hugged me while I cried 5 years of pain I had been holding in. They weren't tears of sadness exactly, they were more like liberation mixed with fury. I finally had what I had always wanted, the truth, vindication, proof that I hadn't done anything wrong. But I also knew that didn't bring back the 5 years I lost. The relationships that were destroyed, the life I had to abandon. The following days were a bombardment of messages. My mom wrote to me on Facebook, apparently she got my new profile. My dad left me a voicemail, Allison sent me like 15, text messages asking for forgiveness. They all basically said the same thing. We're sorry. We were wrong. Please forgive us. We want you back in our lives. Patrick was the only one who didn't contact me directly, but Allison told me he also wanted to apologize but didn't know how. I talked to Jennifer on the phone, and she had also received contact from her family. Her parents had sent her a physical letter because Jennifer had them blocked on everything, saying that God had forgiven them, and they hoped she would also forgive them and return to the family. Jennifer told me she had thrown the letter in the trash without finishing reading it, and that she had no intention of talking to them. Victoria suggested that maybe we should meet with the families, not to forgive them necessarily, but to have closure. She said we deserved the opportunity to tell them in person how they had hurt us, and that they deserved to hear it. I talked to Jennifer about it, and we eventually agreed to do a meeting, but on our terms. We told Daniel to organize a meeting in a neutral place, a restaurant in Portland, and that he could bring my parents, Jennifer's parents, Allison, Patrick, and any other key family members. The meeting was 2 weeks ago. Victoria went with me, and Ben Jennifer's boyfriend went with her. We had agreed they would be our moral support. When we got to the restaurant, it was super awkward. My parents looked older, my mom had grayed quite a bit, and my dad had the same guilty face as Daniel. Allison tried to hug me and I pulled away, not rudely but definitely keeping distance. We all sat at a long table, and Daniel started by explaining to everyone exactly what Monica had confessed. Jennifer's parents sat there looking at Jennifer with something that seemed like remorse, but also a bit of stubbornness, like they still had trouble fully accepting they had been wrong. Then it was my turn to speak. I told them what they had done to me was unforgivable, that they had physically attacked me, thrown me out of my own family, turned me into a pariah in my community, all without asking me once for my side of the story, without giving me a chance to defend myself, without even asking for a shred of evidence. I told them their love was conditional, that at the first problem they had thrown me away like garbage, and that had taught me they never really trusted me or knew me. Jennifer spoke after and was even more direct. She told her parents they had thrown her out of the house, that they had excommunicated her from their religion, that they had basically told her she was a disgrace and a sinner. She asked them how they could call themselves Christians, when the first thing they did was judge and condemn her without compassion or mercy. Jennifer's mom started crying, but Jennifer didn't stop. She told them she had built a new life in Chicago, that she had a wonderful boyfriend who actually treated her with respect and love, and that she didn't need their approval or forgiveness. My parents tried to explain themselves, saying that Monica had been very convincing, that the details she gave them made everything seem real. I asked them what details, and my mom mentioned something vague about Monica, saying Jennifer and I always left family gatherings early together. I told them that wasn't even true, that we had never left anywhere together, and that the fact they accepted gossip from a stranger over their own son's word said everything I needed to know about them. Daniel also tried to apologize again, but this time in front of everyone. He said he had been a coward, that he should have asked me directly instead of attacking me, and that he understood if I never wanted to talk to him again. Greg, who was also there, admitted that he had also been part of the problem by not defending my innocence when everything was happening. The conversation lasted like 2 hours. In the end, Victoria and I left. There was no reconciliation or emotional hugs. I told them I appreciated that they finally knew the truth, but that the damage was done, and I needed time, probably a lot of time, to decide if I could ever have a relationship with them again. Jennifer told her parents something similar. It's been 2 weeks since that meeting, and honestly, I don't know what I feel. Part of me feels vindicated, like I finally won a battle I thought I would never win. But another part of me is still angry, resentful, because 5 years of my life were gone because of a lie nobody bothered to verify. Victoria has been supporting me incredibly well. And in fact, I'm planning to propose to her in December because she's been the only person besides Jennifer who has really known me and trusted me without conditions. Jennifer called me yesterday and told me Ben proposed to her 3 days ago, and she said yes. She asked me if I would go to her wedding, and I told her absolutely yes. She also asked me if I would invite my family to my future wedding, and I told her I didn't know yet. Maybe someday, but not now. Not soon. Monica, by the way, according to Daniel, moved to another state after confessing because she couldn't live in town anymore with everyone knowing what she did. Apparently, some family members wanted us to sue her, but neither Jennifer nor I are interested in that. We've already dedicated enough energy to this situation, and honestly, we just want to move forward with our lives. What I learned from all this, I guess, is that you can survive almost anything if you have even one person who believes in you. Victoria was that person for me, and Ben was that for Jennifer. I also learned that families aren't perfect, and that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally can fail you in the worst possible ways. And that it's okay to walk away from that toxicity, even if they're family, because your mental health and happiness matter more than any family obligation. Last week, Victoria and I were cooking in our apartment, just like the night Daniel showed up, and she asked me if I regretted moving to Seattle. I told her it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because if I hadn't moved, I never would have met her. She laughed and told me I was corny, but that she felt the same way. And in that moment, I realized that despite everything horrible that happened, I ended up building something real and genuine here, something nobody can take away from me.